Hey, everybody, this is Eric Porter for Sea of Tranquility, and welcome to the latest edition of Let's Jam. I've got Chris Samardzic with me, and you may notice somebody else in the frames here that you'd say, why is he here? But we are going to talk some fusion today, and you can't talk fusion without George Lamy. So, welcome, George. Thank you for coming on the show. And where we are right now, we've been going through the history. Chris has been documenting where we've gone from. Chris, we started late 60s. We are now into probably the mid 70s. And we're just going to talk some fusion, some of these bands where the improv plays such an important role in the live shows. And Chris, why don't you kick us off? And George, you jump in anytime you're ready.
Okay, so let me go on to the slideshow here. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I don't know if I'm in the. It's going to take me a second to get it together here,
All
boys.
right.
Okay. What are you seeing right now?
I'm seeing myself.
Oh, you are. Okay. Okay, let me hit this. Oh, here we go. I got to go over the second monitor. Okay. How about now?
I'm seeing myself with some spacey background, I
Oh,
guess.
you see the spacey background.
I do.
Okay. Just you, huh?
Yeah, nobody wants to see that either, Chris.
Okay. Let me now wait. Oh God, I just lost my mouse. I got to get to the slideshow, which is buried back here. And I just lost my mouse. Damn it. Um, Shit, I'm screwing up here, guys. Oh, here it is. Here we go. Okay. Let me move this out of the way. Get rid of Zoom. Okay, I got to go to here. Okay, and I'm going to go to the slideshow, which is going to be right here. And we're going to start it with this slide. All right, there we go. Now I got to get rid of the toolbar still up there. Or is that good?
We're good.
Okay, so this is Jam Band's History, Episode 4. Okay, and we've got basically 1970 to 76 or 77 is really the heyday of this fusion period. And I just want to mention uh, about Bobby Whitlock. He was with Derek and the Dominoes, which we mentioned in an earlier show, and he wrote and played on a bunch of songs. Derek and the Any Day, Layla, What's Love Got to Be So Sad, and Keep on Growing. And we used to cover all those songs. So I just want to mention for him to rest in peace. He just died this past month. So now let's move on to the actual show here. So basically, what's going on is a lot of these members that you're going to see here. Oh wait, I got the wrong show up. I am sorry. Let me get to the right one. I got the wrong intro. So let me move on over to there. Here we go. Oh, whoa, went too far. Man, I'm losing control? Okay, what's going on here? All right, there we go. So sorry about that. So these guys, Tommy Bolin, Jeff Beck, John McLaughlin, Carlos Santana, Herbie Hancock, Stanley Clark, Return Forever, Billy Cobham, and Miles Davis are all guys we're going to feature on this show. Okay. To me, when I grew up, I had all these records. Okay. So to start with, a lot of these guys were in bands previous to this fusion period, and uh, they played at the Fillmore and at Winterland. And the bands that they played with were, let's find them here. Let's see, Coliseum, okay, um, uh, The Flock, Quatermass, Dreams, Zephyr, Larry Carlton, Miles Davis, and Herbie Hancock. So all these bands would open up for like the Grateful Dead or whoever, Jefferson Airplane or whatever. And so we were exposed to this type of music. And then as the record companies moved on, they started selling, uh, instrumental albums. And I think Mahavishnu Orchestra is the one band that just blew the whole thing up. But the first album that all the artists really liked was This next one we're going to go to, and we're going to talk about it, is Miles Davis. Okay. In a Silent Way and Bitches Brew. Now, do you guys want to talk about that at all? Are you familiar with the?
I mean, I think I'm familiar with Bitches Brew. I guess what I would say is probably, and George, you can obviously pop in on this as well, is that it's kind of like Zappa, where a lot of people that went through Miles's band then went out and did other things. I mean, I think Miles had his thing going, and then a lot of these guys went in the rock, more of the, jazz rock, heavier stuff direction. But he's another artist that cultivated all these other players, which I think Zappa is also, you know, was Zappa did that as well. His people went out and did their own thing. But I think from Miles is kind of that, the roots to where Fusion went because so many of these players played with him.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna read off guys that were on this album: Wayne Shorter, Dave Holland, Chick Corea, Tony Williams, Herbie Hancock, John McLaughlin, Cannonball Adderley, and Dak Dionato, or whatever his name is. So those guys were all on this album, and they all went off, including the bands I mentioned earlier. They went off into other groups and formed these fusion bands. But as you can see, there's a poster on the right here with the Grateful Dead and Miles Davis Quintet, which played at the Fillmore. And that's an infamous show that happened. And Neil Schon and Carlos Santana covered In a Silent Way in the closing of Fillmore. And the Allman Brothers did it one night at the Beacon. So, I mean, Miles, and then Neil named his son Miles, and Carlos got the bass player, one of the bass players from Miles' band, that plays with him now. So he was really a big influence on a lot of these rock guys, the jam guys that are
Yeah.
around now still. Okay, so let's go to the next one, and that's going to be Mahavishnu Orchestra. And what do you guys think about them, man? I think they're the ultimate fusion band.
Go, George.
Well, they're definitely where it all starts. I mean, yes, Bitches Brew is basically Fusion University. I mean, all the guys that came out of that became not just players, but leaders. And the first guy to really take control of it is John McLaughlin. 1971, Intermounting Flame. It it sets the parameters for the genre, basically. Everybody trying to tap into the intensity of this record and the breadth of it, the the jamming quality to a lot of the tracks. Everything about it would just appeal to all these band leaders, and everybody took notice. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, he Bill Graham would book him at Winterland, and he played with Emerson, Lake and Palmer on their first tour, and then he played with Robin Trower, uh, um, and then they just had their own shows, and then they started playing in the Berkeley Community Theater, which was a 3,000 seat theater, and a lot of these jazz fusion acts worked really well in the seated theaters, like the Beacon, type of venue where it wasn't an open dance floor. People are, kind of come in to see a jazz quartet play or whatever. So I think they hit it at the right time. Now I seen they only did like 60 shows in the United States, which I was pretty amazed by, because I looked up a lot of these bands. I also want to mention that Miles Davis in 1967 was a headliner at the Berkeley Jazz Festival, which was kind of an offshoot of the New Orleans Jazz Festival and the Monterey Festival. And they did it every year. And the guy who booked Miles in there in '67 is the guy who booked Dead and Company 60, which just went down in Golden Gate Park. So the uh, the Greek Theater is an amazing venue, and it really hosted a lot of these artists, and the Berkeley Community Theater too. Now, also they some of them played at SPAC also,
Oh yeah.
and
The
you
Dead
know,
were mainstays at SPAC. I don't obviously I was a little young in the 70s, so I'm not really sure on this end who came through on the jazz fusion side, but The Dead and the Allman Brothers were regulars at SPAC for years.
Yeah, I looked up Chicago. There were so many varied venues in Chicago I couldn't really pin down, but in New York and San Francisco, they sort of played the same similar venues. Okay, let's go to the next one here. So I saw Herbie Hancock Sextent. The posters there. You can't really read it, but it was with like John Mayall and somebody else. And and so it was really insane, man. It was just like this crazy dissonant jazz stuff. And I saw him also at Winterland with Dave Mason, the Pointer Sisters. So Herbie, he's been one of the main guys ever since. You got anything to say about him, George?
Yeah, he did the couple of these records first coming out of Miles, and it kind of tapped into that where Miles was coming from, and but it wouldn't last long. I think he saw that he needed his own identity, and that's pretty much where Headhunters came up. He leaned heavily into the funk side of it, and that became his identity. But these records the first records when he broke from Miles, they're interesting records too in a different way. Definitely some jammy stuff and um, appealing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he did this song called Water Torture, and it was water torture. Believe me. But I remember that like when I was in high school, I saw it. Okay, so he's a mainstay. He also was a headliner or a co-headliner at the Berkeley Jazz Festival at the Greek Theater. So and he's still around. Okay, so next we're going to go to one of my favorite albums of this period, Billy Cobham Spectrum
Yep.
with Tommy Bolin on guitar and Jan Hammer. To me, I actually own this record on when I got rid of my vinyl collection. I got picked it up on CD. I think this is one of the greatest albums, and Quadrant 4 or Quadrant 1 and Quadrant 2 songs are like a major jazz rock song that people cover to today, including Derek Trucks. So, what do you guys think about this record?
We've talked about this a number of times over the years, whether it's been on For Fusion Friday or in the prog seat for that matter. Amazing stuff. And this was something I came into late. I knew Tommy Bolin from Deep Purple. And, this was one of those, I think, when I started reading and getting into fusion, this was an album that always popped up. So I've had this one for a long time. Absolutely love it. And I just find it, from a guitar perspective, um, it shows how well Bolin fit into this. I mean, and you could talk about the album itself. Like you said, it's a great record, but a lot of rock guys aren't going to transition well into fusion. And I think he did a great job on this record. George?
Yeah, Cobham picking him to be the guitarist on this was a stroke of genius. Uh, he could have gone for a jazzier guy and it just wouldn't have had the same impact. The whole thing is the fact that this album is what it is a credit to Billy's intelligence. Mahavishnu basically broke up over songwriting credits issues and guys not being allowed to contribute. He just sat on the side and was just like quiet. He knew he was keeping his tracks he knew he wanted to be a leader. And when they broke up, he was ready to go and just put out a record that's still a classic. It's people don't never know what kind of a composer a drummer is going to be, but he wrote this whole album and it's well composed stuff, really well.
Yeah, Bolin was in the band. Uh, anyway, he was in a band called Energy previous to this, which was a fusion band or jazz rock band. And so he was just jumped right in. He was just ready for it because he was that was his style. Now he was in Zephyr before that, which had like a Janis Joplin female singer, and apparently that wasn't the perfect fit for him. But and then he went into James Gang and then Deep Purple, and it's just really sad. I got to see him on his solo tour right before he died, so I was really lucky to see Tommy Bolin live. And I actually met uh, Billy Cobham, And it's one of the few times because I work in the business, I was starstruck when I met the guy. I was working with his manager. I did some tours with him and his manager with another band, and he brought me in the dressing room and introduced me to him, and I'm just like, oh my God, that's Billy. It's just like I just choked up. But anyway, okay, let's go to the next band, which I think is one of the greatest, which is Return Forever. Romantic Warrior is supposedly the record uh, that I had back then. And I got to see these guys in 2008. Did you guys get to see them at all when they came back through?
Yeah, I saw 2008 and 2011, both reunion tours. Just fantastic.
And
Yeah, it was.
George
I
has
got
to
to see them
go on
two
this
nights in
one.
San Francisco.
I
He's
know I won't speak out of turn, George, but I believe Romantic Warrior is your favorite record.
Yes, it is. And it's kind of a little bit of a departure. People make it more than it is, but it is there's a thematic, I mean, there's no lyrics, but there's a thematic medieval overarching with the song titles. There's an overarching theme there. Um, some people say it's more leaning into prog than the earlier stuff. I would just say it eliminated some of the fusion tropes that were on stuff like No Mystery. There's no funk on here really, a little bit. There's and interestingly enough, the tours, all the old tours, they did stretch a lot. But when they went out on a Romantic Warrior tour, they played the songs pretty straight, except for the title track. They did stretch with that a little bit, but they played in comparison to the older tours, they played it pretty straight.
all right. Well, I think everybody agrees that it's one of the greatest fusion albums of
Yeah.
that era. But I'm going to go to the next one, which is one of my favorites, which is Al Di Meola, Elegant Gypsy. And this thing is just fantastic. To me, it's a crossover between rock and jazz, and I just love this record. Are you guys familiar with it at all?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think, it just shows when you take some of these bands, like we were talking about, and George pointed it out, you have a bunch of these guys came from miles. Then you had Mahavishnu, you have Return to Forever, the big guys, and yet the guys within these bands. So, like George said, you might not know what's coming out of a drummer, but you've got a great record from Al Di Meola. Lenny White has put out some great stuff. And we just talked about Billy Cobham. So and it just because you're a great musician doesn't mean you can write, you could be a great player, but if you can't write a song, and a lot of these guys show on these albums, Al, one of them, uh, that they're terrific composers as well as players. So, you know, you get that uh, two for deal there.
And
Yeah, I
Chick,
was doing research on Al for one of these shows, and I go, "Oh, he was born the same day I was,
There you go.
the
George
same day. He's my birthday brother. I mean, the same exact day, not the same year, everything."
and George,
Uh,
what do you? I know you love this record as much as I do. So,
yeah, it's one of my all-time favorites. It, Chick encouraged the guys to all be composers. Like the first couple albums, he wrote almost everything with a little bit of from Clark, but he was telling them all along that they needed to step out as composers, and they're all kids. I mean, Demiola is 20 years old on Where Have I Known You Before,
Jesus.
so they're really young. He has even said he never even thought about being a composer. He's like, I'm in a band with Chick Corea. What do I need to write songs for? But it's always good to have that in your arsenal that you can compose. And
Absolutely.
this is really well written stuff.
yeah, it's great. Okay, let's go to our next artist. Is that cool? Here we go. Jeff Beck. Now he crossed over with Blow to Blow, Blow by Blow, and Wired, and there he is playing with John McLaughlin and Jan Hammer. Him and Jan Hammer kind of were, which comes from the early stuff. So Beck took notes from these guys and turned into one of them. So I just love. I was a big Jeff Beck fan all the way from Truth on through. So This was just a great period for him. What do you guys think?
I love those records. I think one of the things about Jeff that I really like is I felt like he fit in this well, but yet at the same time he kept maybe this is I want to say the right word, but his personality still came through. Whether you're listening to the old stuff or the fusion stuff, it's Jeff Beck. I love his subtleties with the guitar. He does a lot of stuff with the volume knob, but even in a lot of, again, I think we said this about Tommy Bolin. I don't think there's a lot of rock guys that are going to make that transition. There's a phrasing, there's a difference playing fusion than there is playing rock. But I think Jeff Beck's another guy that kept his personality, but he fit into this mold and he did it well. George?
Yeah, I would agree. He's more, especially on Blow by Blow, he's more instead of jazz rock, he's more rock jazz. Like he he leans to the rock side and more like flavors in the jazz fusion stuff. So that kind of gave him a different, like there'd be a lot of people that maybe wouldn't go full bore fusion, but they would listen to these Jeff Beck records. So
True.
Yeah, true crossover.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and then so this what we just went through was really the stuff that I had albums of and I was really into. But there's other notables which we heard on FM radio a lot, and we're going to do that on the next page here. So I'm going to go to that one, and we got John Luponte, uh, and these couple records here, and then I guess he did a Mahavishnu record later, and then Alan Holdsworth with Soft Machine and Blueford and UK. So you guys can talk about any of this stuff. Um, but I just think it was, kind of the tail end that was happening on the fusion scene. So, what,
I mean, you've got Holdsworth in the corner, and I'll let George go as well. But I mean, you're talking about Enigmatic Ocean to me, even though it's a Pawnee record, Alan Holds it's a great record, don't get me wrong, but hearing Holdsworth on that just takes it to another level. As great as Pawnee is, I love Pawnee stuff. The Soft Machine with bundles, I mean, and actually I've recently got a few things, Soft Works and a couple Soft Machine live recordings, and it's just always when you hear Alan play, I mean, however he got what was in his head out through his fingers and on the guitar, just to this day amazes me. I wish UK had lasted a little longer. Now that's a band where I love Wetton's voice, number one. It's not usual that, and they had their both sides, their proggy, their rock, and Alan's stuff might throw some jazz in there. Um, but that album is amazing. I wish we'd gotten at least one more from them. I know, George, I know you'll talk about the Bruford. We love the Bruford, but Holdsworth is kind of a guy unto his own as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it was almost like he wrote his own language on guitar because I don't know. I mean, you can go back. I don't know that I've heard anyone who's had the impact of Holdsworth, um, just being so unique. And that's kind of my take on Alan.
Yeah, Ponte's a big figure because he comes out of both Zappa and Mahavishnu, and later end up playing Return to Forever. So he's in the three biggest instrumental bands of maybe of all time.
Great
Uh,
point.
yeah.
he these all these records are a little bit underrated actually, with a lot of people not as into him or not into him at all. I remember just a few years ago, a guy like Andy Edwards just discovered him. That blew me away. It's like for me, they were one of the essential building blocks of this genre, especially Enigmatic Ocean and an Imaginary Voyage. And with Holdsworth, you had a guy that was like a plug and play player for a lot of the English bands. You went through Tempest and um, a bunch of these bands, and he was like, you're basically stunt guitar player. You get this guy, and he draws ears and eyes to all these records. Not the biggest composer, but a guy that just if you want impressive leads on your album, a lot of people turn to him, and well deserved.
Definitely. Okay, so we're going to go to another twofer here, and uh, weather report. Okay, and Jocko. Now, Jocko has solo records, and he played with Joni Mitchell later, and just he's like a legendary bass player. But this weather report, they do a song called Birdland, and to me, it's like generic fusion. It's like the one song that like crossed over completely to the mainstream. What do you guys think about that?
Go ahead, George.
Absolutely. Weather report again, you got a guy that coming out of the Miles thing with Joe Zawinul, and they went through different phases. The early stuff bears no resemblance to what they became in the Jocko years. Like you said, Birdland is like that was an FM track that a fusion cross
Right.
FM track. It's a pretty melody. It's kind of basic for fusion, but I don't know that's entirely a bad thing. I'm sure they brought a lot of new ears into the genre. And Jocko broke out because other than Stanley Clark, a lot of guys didn't have the most personality on bass, and the soloing technique was next level. I mean, it was basically him and Clark for a long time, and that's all there really was on that level. So no, that he crossed over is no surprise to me.
Yeah, yeah. So that's basic. Yeah, all these records were in my collection, mixed in with, rock and whatever, Doobie Brothers, and I kind of was into this music during that period, and then I got back into like Rainbow and Queen and that kind of UFO, and then Thin Lizzy and Journey and all that in the late 70s. Uh, so there's another band that I saw in the 80s. I'm gonna get them. I think they deserve some credit because they kind of carried it on, the Dixie Dregs. So what do you guys think of them?
I love them. It's got everything for me. With the violin, I love violin. Steve Morris is absolutely amazing. I've seen Steve Morris a number of times, and obviously, again, pretty far removed from when the Dregs formed. So sometimes he goes out as Steve Morris Band, sometimes he go out as the Dregs, and now you kind of have that. I know LaRue plays in both, but I love those Dregs records. I mean, those early Dregs. I love Night of the Living Dregs. And maybe a true use of fusion. They use jazz, they use country, they
Right?
use rock. I mean, they bring a lot of elements into their music. But I do think they appeal to rock guys, to jazz guys. As far as I can tell, they're held in pretty high regard. Um, T. Lavitz, Morgenstein, just all around great players as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
saw him in 82. The guy with the cowboy hat was the original, in the picture here, the original manager of the Allman Brothers, uh, Twiggs Linden, and he ended up. The Allman Brothers didn't get paid in Buffalo. He went over the counter and stabbed the guy. Was put
Got
in
to be
jail,
careful.
but he got out and he managed them, and then he died in a skydiving accident. But anyway, I just wanted. His brother was a guitar tech for Steve Morris for years.
And George, your take on the Dregs?
yeah, they came out of University of Miami in the mid 70s. They were all down there and they formed a band. They cut a independent record down there called The Great Spectacular. They come out of the Mahavishnu school totally, but they added like rock self-restraint, not as much stretching, try and go more concise songwriting, that kind of thing. And it set them apart. I think it gave them some identity. Great records.
Yeah, they kind of had some, chicken picking in there too.
Oh
Like
yeah,
southern kind of
the
stuff.
early stuff they really threw a lot of country in. I think
Well, Dixie, down in Dixie.
true, true. Until you become the Dregs, you know.
Okay, so what
They
I'm going to do is okay, so those are my records that I picked. I hope you guys, it seemed like you agreed that they were the greatest, fusion albums of that era. They at least were for me. And I'm going to go now to this next place in Berkeley, California, where we had the Jazz Festival. And there is Stanley Clark, Santana, and
Herbie.
Chick, not Chick Corea.
That's Herbie back there.
Herbie Hancock playing at the Berkeley at the Greek Theater. Now you can see the columns there, and you can see the audience. It's an actual Greek theater that's styled after the theaters in Greece, or in and it's probably to me one of the greatest venues that I've ever been at. It rivals Red Rocks, and there's not a bad seat in the house, and it's cement and it's real rough. It's like 100 years old. It was built by Randolph Hearst, and it's like it has great acoustics, and they would do all the jazz and all the rock shows. I saw Al Di Meola and Santana there. I've seen Todd Rundgren. I've seen The Dead. I mean, it's just the greatest venue. And you're sitting up at the top here, this top view, and you're looking out over the sunset over the San Francisco Bay. It's just amazing. So I wanted to mention that venue and the jazz festivals that they always had, and then the Berkeley Community Theaters where most of these bands played that supported them, the bands that we're talking about. And I got one more thing I want to hit here. So we're going to go back to a little bit of jam here, guys, okay? And it is Dead and Company 60, 2025. There is 80,000 people showed up to see them for 3 days in San Francisco at a high price ticket. And then they also had a concert at the Jerry Garcia Amphitheater, the one on the right-hand corner there. So I think the jam scene's really alive, guys. What do you think?
I mean, I can only speak to my area, Chris, but we've had a number of shows come through. We have one this weekend in Lake George with Mo headlining. I see these bands coming through all the time, and even there's probably two local venues in my area that are more club venues that are almost 100% dedicated to jam, whether it's local bands or bands that are touring, but maybe not at that elevated level. So at least in my area, there's constantly music coming through under that, that's jam band scene related.
All right, one more picture here of that. Obviously, 80,000 people, this aerial shot taken by Nugs. Uh, I mean, just amazing. At the price of the ticket and people paid and went. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I didn't go to the show. I stayed home, but just incredible, man. The jam scene is very much alive.
Agreed.
So let's go. According to me, I'm right around 30 minutes here. Let's try to go back to us. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds good. And we'll,
Let's see.
as we said, it was
All right, how's that? Are we back? We're
perfect.
back.
Perfect.
Got it.
So I know, George, any last thoughts on that with the fusion scene that you wanted to throw out?
No, not particularly. I mean, when you first asked me to be a part of this, I never had thought about the way the fusion related to the jam band scene. But in an embryonic form, it makes a lot of sense. But I just always thought it was very separate, and the only frame of reference I had is the Horde tour in like 92, 93. You
Yep.
had fusion bands on that bill. You had Bella Fleck and the Flecktones were on that bill. Um, and bands with fusion players like Aquarium Rescue
Aquarium
Unit,
Rescue Unit, right.
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
they were on there, and somebody else. But yeah, that was my only frame of reference as far as the two worlds meeting.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
well, we did the Horde in '94.
nice.
Dave Matthews was on it, and Cheryl Crow, so it's kind of crossed over more commercial. But Aquarium Rescue Unit was on one of them, and a lot of those guys have gone on to play in jam bands and
Yeah.
Widespread Panic and stuff like that.
And
Now,
they've
I
all,
just want to mention the Dead. Uh, Bob Dylan quote the Dead, the freedom of the Dead, and I think the Dead have, or whatever, Dead and Company, whatever you want to call it, have a certain amount of freedom in their music. They just don't give a damn about the way they dress or if they talk to the audience. They just get similar to jazz guys. They just get up there and play, and that freedom, the audience is just dancing and they just love it. So I think they really represent a freedom in music. Their
Nice.
music does. So
All right.
it's just my opinion about them
Well,
trying to boil it down to something.
I do want to thank George for bringing his expertise in and
Absolutely.
always
Great. Thank
you
you.
know looked forward to this episode a lot. So we'll have a few more coming up, but I want to thank everyone for watching the show. Chris, thank you for all your work on this. And until next time, just remember, let's jam, everybody.
Okay, we're going to sign off.